right, let's do it. We're diving deep today into a world, well, most of us only see in the movies. We've got court documents, we've got trial summaries, all about bringing down the Gambino family.
Yeah, this is 91, the big REO indictment against John Gotti, his underboss, Frank Lucascio, and of course, you can't forget Salvatore Gravano, Sammy the Bull.
I gotta be honest, whenever I hear Ryko, my eyes kind of glaze over. It's like, yeah, organized crime, bad guys, but what makes it so different?
See, most prosecutions, you're taking out a foot soldier here, a lieutenant there. Arco, you go after the whole structure. Like,
Yeah.
you're not just stopping a crime, you're dismantling that business of crime.
So it's about the money, more than just jail time.
Exactly. Seizing assets, crippling their finances. That's how you truly break a group like the Gambinos.
And that's why they went after Gotti's lawyer, right? Bruce Cutler, trying to disqualify him before the trial even started.
Oh, that's a huge move. You don't do that lately. They had to prove Cutler was so conflicted he couldn't represent Gotti fairly.
Well, Gotti himself was recorded griping about how much he paid Cutler to represent other Gambino guys, like hundreds of thousands of dollars.
House counsel, basically. So is Cutler working for John Gotti, the individual, or the Gambino family's interests? That's a problem.
But what really sunk Cutler wasn't just the money, it was. They had him on tape, in the room, while Gotti's talking about crimes.
That's the game changer. Now, Cutler's not just a lawyer, he's a potential witness. Imagine that jury seeing him, knowing he heard the same stuff they just did.
Yeah, that's not good. All right, let's get to the good stuff. The Ravenite Social Club, or more specifically, the apartment above it.
Ah, the Ravenite. This wasn't just a hangout spot, it was the inner sanctum, and the feds had it wired for sound, top to bottom.
So every conversation, every shady deal, the FBI was listening.
This is how they learned the Gambino family's playbook. The hierarchy, the lingo, how they operated day to day. Gold mine for the prosecution.
And then you've got Sammy the Bull, Gravano flipping, testifying against Gotti and Locascio. Talk about betrayal, right?
Cooperating witness, always a tricky thing. Gravano's testimony was invaluable. He could explain the context of those recordings, but, of course, the defense is going to try to paint him as a rat, a liar trying to save his own skin.
Okay, so we have Gotti on tape and Sammy the Bull singing like a canary. Where does that leave Locascio, the underboss?
This is where it gets tricky. He's saying, look, I was in the Ravenite, but I wasn't always actively part of those conversations.
Hold on, can they get you just for being in the room while crimes are being discussed?
Not that simple. They had to prove Locascio wasn't just some passive observer, that as underboss, him being there meant something, that even subtle comments, they showed his involvement.
So it's about proving his presence wasn't just a coincidence. Interesting. Gotti also had issues with the way the judge was instructing the jury, right? Saying it was too vague.
Jury instructions, those are vital. It's the framework for how they decide the case. Gotti was worried because the RAKO charges, he claimed, the wording, made it too easy to convict him for stuff other Gambinos did, even if he didn't know about it.
So even as the boss, he's trying to say, hey, not my fault if some guys went rogue. Clever, but did it work?
Not really. Judge said the instructions were fine, and ultimately the jury found Gotti and Locascio guilty on most charges. It does raise the question, how far does that responsibility go in a family like this?
We've already learned so much. The indictment, the players, the legal wrangling. I can't wait to get into the nitty-gritty of the crimes themselves.
We're just getting started. Buckle up, because this is going to get even more fascinating.
Okay, let's get into it. What kind of crimes are we talking about here? The Ravenite tapes, they got to have more than just guys talking tough.
Oh, way more. It's a full-blown criminal operation they're running. And one of the big ones that came out, the murder of Paul Castellano.
Castellano, that's, he was the head of the Gambino family before Gotti, right?
You got it. And on the tapes, you hear Gotti talking about the hit, why he wanted Castellano gone. It's chilling stuff, you know? Really shows how ruthless Gotti was. But Castellano, he wasn't the only victim. The prosecution had evidence tying Gotti to the murders of Thomas Bellotti, Robert DiBernardo, Liborio Maluto.
So eliminating rivals.
Yeah.
Got to stay on top, right?
Yeah.
But there was also that obstruction of justice charge, right?
Right. The recordings revealed discussions about another trial, Thomas Gambino, possibly related to John. They were trying to influence the outcome, you know, pull some strings.
Yeah, trying to rig a trial while they're already on trial. The audacity. What about Locascio? What specifically did they have on him?
He might not have been giving the orders, but the prosecution argued his position as underboss, being present at those meetings at the Ravenite apartment. That made him complicit. Those weren't just casual get-togethers. They were actively planning criminal activities. And Locascio, he contributed to those discussions, gave his input. You could tell he was involved.
So it wasn't just about being there. It was about being a part of the planning. Makes sense. Beyond the murders, the obstruction, what else were these guys into?
Oh, you name it. The recordings exposed a lot. There were discussions about a pretty big gambling operation in Connecticut, for one, how it was structured, the profits, even how they intimidated people to make sure it ran smoothly.
Classic mob stuff. Gambling, always got to have a hand in that.
And loan sharking. They provided loans at crazy high interest rates and used threats and violence to get their money back. They were preying on vulnerable people, desperation. That's their bread and butter.
Pretty dark stuff. You got to admit, it's kind of impressive how much the FBI was able to uncover. It wasn't just about catching them saying incriminating stuff. It was about really understanding how their whole operation worked.
Right. The tactics, the hierarchy, their blatant disregard for the law, they got it all on tape. And speaking of the law, remember Gotti challenging the jury instructions? He was worried the RA2 charges could mean he'd get convicted for things he didn't even know about. He was trying to separate himself from his underlings.
Trying to say, hey, I'm the boss, but I can't control everything everyone does. So what happened? Did that argument fly?
The judge wasn't buying it, said the instructions were clear and fair. It does make you think, though. How do you draw the line in an organization like the Gambino family? When does leadership end and individual actions begin?
Yeah, it's got to be a tough call. So all this evidence, Sammy the Bull's testimony, what was the final verdict?
Guilty. Both Gotti and Locascio on most of the charges. And with Archeo, the penalties are serious, like really serious.
All right, so guilty verdicts, Areteo charges. What did that mean for Gotti and Locascio?
Life sentences. No parole. Spent the rest of their days behind bars.
Wow. A message sent, for sure. But this was, what, the early 90s? How much does a Gambino trial even matter today?
Well, you might think pinstripe suits and social clubs are a thing of the past, right? But organized crime? Oh, they're still around. Just, they've modernized a bit.
So no more, controlling neighborhoods, shaking down businesses.
Please. We're talking cybercrime, human trafficking, these sophisticated financial scams, money laundering across borders. It's a whole different ballgame.
Kind of scary to think about, honestly. So what can we learn from a case like this that feels so, I don't know, old school?
The tactics change, but the core idea, it's the same. RHO, it still works. You hit them where it hurts, the money, disrupt their finances, and the whole structure crumbles.
Like cutting off the head of a snake.
More like a hydra, with all those heads. And it shows how important it is for law enforcement to work together, not just within a country, but globally. Organized crime, it doesn't respect borders.
Makes sense. But what about us regular folks? Anything we can do to protect ourselves?
Knowledge is power, right? Learn how these groups operate. Phishing scams, identity theft, even seemingly legit businesses could be fronts. Be skeptical, do your research, and if something seems off, report it.
Yeah, too good to be true and all that.
Exactly, and support laws and policies that fight organized crime. It's a constant battle, but we all got to do our part.
This has been amazing. We've gone from the courtroom to the inner workings of the mob to how it affects us today.
And it shows that no matter how much the world changes, the pursuit of justice, that's a constant. We need to be vigilant, adaptable, and ready to take on whatever these criminal enterprises throw at us.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of the Gambino family. Who knew legal documents could be so fascinating?
They tell a story, that's for sure. And sometimes those stories have more to teach us than we realize.
We'll be back soon with another deep dive. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe out there.